Hi, hello everyone. Thanks for joining into our session today on the intersection of AI and Web3. My name is Narong. I'm a technical specialist at SCB 10X, where I see technical side of our investment. Here I have Sean with me today, a bit of background with Sean. Sean has been in the AI space for a long time, from Stanford Lab to Allen Institute for AI to Snap. He is currently an associate professor at the University of Southern California in CS department. He is also currently a CEO and co-founder of Sahara AI, where he focuses on decentralization of AI ecosystem. Hi, Sean. Thanks for joining today.
Hi, Narom. Great to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah. So let's warm up everything and discuss about AI in general first before we dive into Web3. How about that? So you mentioned before that one day AI might replace many parts of our work. So let's unpack that discussion a little bit more. How could this be a threat to knowledge worker? What do you think?
Right. I think today's main issues with AI industry is everything is been pretty much centralized. And what that means can be break down into three dimensions, right? As you guys know, AI developments involve three main pieces, the data, the model, and the compute. And we can see right now the success of big companies like Google, Meta, and OpenAI are being able to really centralizing all these three dimensions really well. They are able to hire the best talents over the world, all of the great graduate PhD students, and then just like trying to do all of the frontier research for them. They are able to build huge data centers, consolidate all of the GPU resource and compute to create huge computing power that continuously able to proceed on the scaling law. They're able to use the best data service provider out there for players like Scale AI to just pay for the data sets. And because of they control all of these three dimensions, they're able to really dominate the ownership and the contribution attribution and also the pay rate for all these three dimensions, right? They take all these three resources to build the best application out there. They're charging the application users, they get the revenue. Now they can take this revenue to say, hey, I want to pay this amount of money for the compute power that I'm using, and I want to pay people by this salary rate, and I want to pay the data service provider by this. They give it basically give one-time cost to all these three types of providers and take all of the ownerships of whatever being generated out there. And I think that's a really intransparent and sort of unfair economic relationships between the whole ecosystem participants. As you can tell, the data providers doesn't really own the data set they are continuously given to this AI model, which are improving the AI model day by day. And the model developers are also not taking any shares of those models being built within those companies. So at the end of the day, the companies control all of the ownership and everything, while the upstream contributors are just left out of the economy. And as this whole relationship proceed, what we'll be seeing is all of the application gateway companies like Google, Meta, OpenAI, they control the whole economic sort of bottleneck, while the other people are getting left out of being in a fair sort of economic relationship. I think that's really concerning to this industry, and therefore we really need to look for ways of disrupting these paradigms, and in order to giving back the control of data, of model, giving people ownership, especially using blockchain to power this kind of ownership and attributions to be auditable, transparent, and fair.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. Talking about the ownership, you see, now we have like a open source model that everyone can own, and then we have like a proprietary model, like a commercial model that, like big tech company is owning. How do you see the tension between like the open source model and the commercial model owned by these big techs? And then how do you see the decentralization of this model can help, with the ecosystem?
Yeah, I think open source models are always great to exist regardless of what the commercial companies are doing because number one, they are advancing science, right? Because of the open source of these models, every researchers and students can look into the recipe and the data and the model parameters of the best models, at least like the tier one models out there, so they can keep investigating new problems, new research challenges on top of the best models out there and keep advancing the frontier. Otherwise, if they only study models that are like 1 or 2 years old, all of the findings and results might not be relevant to the research frontier. So I think that's always important to keep an open science, open community to researcher. But I think this is also very disruptive to the commercial companies because commercial companies can charge an unfair sort of a rate of those models through API calls, right? For example, when there's no models is comparably good and open source compared to GPT 3.5 back then or ChatGPT back then, ChatGPT, they can charge a much larger margin to
Mhm.
the users because they have no other options they can choose from. But now if there are some model that are 90% close to ChatGPT, but it's like 100 times cheaper or even free out there, this is basically very disruptive to the economic sort of business models for those companies. And I think that's healthier to make the entire sort of foundational model space more more sort of friendly and more fair in terms of charging people. But I do want to distinguish on the concept of open source model versus decentralized model. Open source model has the benefit of supporting open science, but the bottleneck is it doesn't really benefit the contributors economically, right? If I'm a researcher and I open source everything, I'm doing basically nonprofit contributions to the society, but it doesn't really help bootstrap my personal sort of commercialization or monetizations of my knowledge and expertise. Versus decentralizations in AI, in my opinion, is not always meaning to decentralize all of the physical aspects or the traditional recipe of how AI was built, right? We are not trying to say, hey, compute has to be decentralized or the model development has to be decentralized. I think the first touching point for decentralization of AI is to decentralize the economic relationship, the governance of AI assets, right? For example, models should still be built using centralized data centers. Models should still be built by the best model developers, the talents out there, and models should still be powered by the data sets, the high quality data sets, and most valuable data sets that are created by different domain experts. But a model should be seen as a shared assets by all of these participants in the process of development, right? Today, if you contribute your data sets in building a model that I'm the model developers, I rather see the relationship of the ownership on this model as you taking maybe 30-40% of this model's ownership. I'm taking the rest of the 60%. Or I can even give out another 10% of the model revenue share to the compute providers. So all of us three parties become the co-owners of these assets. And once I start monetizing these models or agents, all of us will continuously get revenue shares down the road as protected or guaranteed by the smart contract of revenue sharing mechanisms I deploy on the blockchain. I think that's a much more fair and sort of trustless protocols for decentralizing AI, starting with decentralizing the governance of these AI assets.
Yeah, I have a question on decentralizing, like the data curation part. Like, how do we make sure that everyone that is contributing to the data set that is being used to train the model, contributing on the high quality data that is suitable for, for model training?
I think data is a very tangible space for decentralization because if you're looking at how data works for AI today, it's already very much distributed and decentralized, right? Everyone is writing their social media contents on Twitter, Reddit, everyone contributing to Wikipedia, and all these are already been proven to be super useful resources for powering the foundational model back in like a year ago. Um, and now I think the next important trend for pushing this foundational model to be more powerful is really on customizations and personalizations, right? Meaning that the way I'm using models like GPT will be following my personal preference,
Mhm.
my tone, my language, my cultural background, which looks very different from your way of using your model. And in that process, I basically talk to my model every day, all of the conversation being stored on the so-called memory or the history of these applications. And my feedback to those models are also saved in a way to improve the model. And this is a very continuous process to the point that my model in a year will be very much familiarized with who I am and what kind of jobs I'm doing, the people I'm interacting with, the type of questions I often ask. At that point, I think these personalizations is essentially powered by very personal usage data and conversation data and my connections to other personal applications like my Twitter accounts and so on. And these are very much needed to be protected, both in the privacy protection purpose as well as the values of this personal data, right? So I think down the road, it's not just about a population of data service providers trying to create a data set that is useful for AI developments, that kind of decentralization, but also about every single user who are using AI application, they are the generated user data and conversations and all sort of data connections to the model need to be protected and need to be actually attributed if the model owners or the model developers are using this data to improve the model, then they need to really give back the sort of revenue shares to those data providers they are leveraging and to create a more like a fair and open up the economic sort of mechanisms to every people who are not just just like feeding data, but also like talking or using these AI apps.
Mm. Yeah, as yourself, since yourself, as you are in academia and then you are a professor, right? And you used to be a researcher. Since you have been in the academia space for so long, how does the conversation around AI and data ownership evolve over time? Like, do people aware about this more? Is there more talking point about this?
Yeah, actually this is a long lasting topics in research community. There's many ways of people calling it. Some people calling it data pricing. Some people call it data provenance, ownerships, or some other different terminologies. But they are all pointing to the same thing. Basically, like if my data is valuable for the model in doing some task, then how should I trace that contributions of the data in the model's behavior, and how should I price that contributions to the model's behavior, right? Let's say today, if you ask GPT a question, and you're paying like a $1 to get the answer of that questions from GPT, that $1 might be actually attributing back to uh, a dozens of users who provided data points
Mhm.
to GPT's training process that are influential on this particular answer or response the models are given, right? If I'm asking about sort of a celebrity sort of kind of the albums or their records in the past 1 year, then only the data points that are related to this particular celebrity will be useful. So it's only a subset of many of the data points being used to train the model will be relevant. And the providers of those training data points should be attributed for the revenues this model is making. This is called data attribution problem, and it's been a very important and timely problems. But
Mhm.
the challenge of all these data attributions and ownership problem is that in order to calculate such contributions at the real time is very costly, it's very expensive. The cost to do that is multiple times of the cost to generate such an answer to your question. So in order to do real-time contribution attribution, it's still we're still looking at much more efficient algorithms and approaches that can make this sub linear to the cost of doing the actual model inference, for example. So therefore, I think everyone want to achieve that goal of like understanding who own the data sets, how much I should pay to that data set, based on uh, the specific usage of the model that are building on those data. But we are still a few steps, maybe a couple years away from doing this entirely in an algorithm-driven way and in an automatic way. Yeah.
Yeah, that compensation is one thing that we have to figure out, right? Another thing that I have a question is regarding like the portion of ownership. Like you see, sometime if we have different contributor, certain contributor may contribute more data, like a larger chunk of data, and they have a higher ownership of the model, and then they become
Mhm.
a whale of the model. I mean, how do we, keep out of this kind of problem, like everyone get a fair share of ownership of the model?
Yes, that's a great question. Which goes back to the my answer just now, right? So data attribution is not a global problem. It's not like a global problem. By that, I don't mean like if I have 1,000 data points and you have 100 data points, it doesn't necessarily mean I I always contribute 10 times as much as you. It really depending on the concrete queries or the questions the model is answering, right? Let's say I'm an expert on AI, you're an expert on some other subject like biology, and we contribute different amount of data to the model's training. But when the model is answering questions about biology, it's more likely your data points are being helpful and useful, empowering the model's reasoning process. So you should get more revenue shares when the
Mm.
model is answering biology questions, right? Versus if the model is answering AI questions, I got more shares. So it's a what we call it is a conditional attribution
Mm.
based on the actual query the model being asked. And I think that's a much more fair compensation strategy
Mm.
than a so-called global static um, participation and portion proportional contribution.
So I believe there are certain way of identifying this at the moment, right? So there is no concrete way, like one way to do it, but people are still figuring out how to do it, right?
Yeah, like I share, I think there are already some general principles of how to do this, this so-called conditional attribution, but the algorithm is very time consuming to
Mhm.
run. It's too expensive so that people are not willing to run this kind of attribution methods. Let's say if you originally pay $1 for the model to answer a question, now you need to pay $10 to get that attribution being done. Still not in a usable and economically sort of an adoptable stage. But if it's lower the cost by 100 times, I believe everyone is willing to start using this technique.
What do you see is a bottleneck that needs to be solved in order to make it, usable?
Yeah, it's mainly on how to make the computation of this attribution I mentioned
Mhm.
to be very efficient and low
Algorithm, right?
cost. Yes, the algorithm for doing that.
Okay, yeah. So, yeah, I believe you are wearing two hats at the moment, one as an academia and one as an entrepreneur, right? As an entrepreneur, Sahara AI just raised $43 million from major investors like Pantera, Binance Lab, and us, SCB 10X. So, can you walk our listener through like specifically what kind of problem you are trying to solve?
Yes. I think the core problem we are trying to solve here is to really build an ecosystem for an AI-driven future. And what that means, let me just expand on a little bit more on that is an AI-driven future doesn't just means AI being more capable, being more competent, but also means every person, every individual is power to create content and applications to monetize themselves in a much more efficient way if you imagine in the internet generation, when we start having internet, it's because we have some network protocols and some web browsers that everyone can use. But back then, internet is not that um, exciting. But it really get exciting once everyone start using these tools like browser and the DNS and all these internet protocol to create content, post it online, and use that to exchange ideas, to communicate ideas, to become much more creative and um, connected with the rest of the world, right? And then the internet become really exciting. And I think now an AI-driven future is in a similar stage. We start having tools powered by AI that can help us to create content and sort of exchange ideas. It's much in a much create in a much efficient way. Think about video generations can done in a couple of minutes. Image generation can done in even seconds. And I can write a huge article based on my personal data within just a minute versus I need to probably spend hours in the past. So the time cost for you to present your idea to use leveraging your knowledge expertise, it's in a very different scale today. So think about AI as the new internet protocol as a toolkit, right? So what we are lacking in the new AI-driven future is the infrastructure to protect people's ownerships and sort of the governance mechanisms around these user-generated contents done by the AI, right? Let's say if I make an application today, how should I tell this application is developed by myself plus using another 10 people's data sets plus using another provider's GPU compute? And how can I trace these contributions and ownerships using blockchains rather than just putting everything in a centralized cloud server that is potentially will be hacked, will be modified halfway, right? Or being interpreted by the owner in many different ways. How can I make the whole thing 100% objectives and sort of transparent? So that's the core problem Sahara AI is tackling. We basically want to become the infrastructure platform for such an AI-driven future to power all of the content generators, application generators, to protect their ownership, to monetize themselves in a much fair and trustless way.
Mm. Yeah, I think you have already worked with multiple major big tech like Microsoft or Amazon. What kind of problem are you currently trying to help them solve at the moment?
Right. No, Sahara AI start launching their first products, milestone products, which sits on our application layer. This product is called Data Service Platform, right? And just to give a quick overview, another two main flagship products we have on our application layer is AI Developer Platform, which is also just live two weeks ago with ability to allow people upload data sets and register ownership over those data sets on chain. And then we also have an AI marketplace, which is coming up later this month. So Data Service Platform is our first flagship product, and we actually went to market focusing on serving some enterprise clients like Microsoft and Amazon back in 2023. And back then, we focusing on enterprise client for a few reasons. Number one is we need to first validate our technologies for collecting high quality data sets is ready. So we look for the most challenging use cases in the industry back then. For example, with Microsoft, we work on math problems that are presented in a multimodal form, right? Both charts, images, tables, and questions asking those charts and images about math related knowledge. With Amazon, we work on a lot of uh, uh, very well-known language model labeling and refinement problem like red teaming, like
Mm.
writing in complex prompts and so on. So through working on these most representative data use cases across different verticals, across different modality, we understand what the product's supposed to be looking like in order to serve these most timely and important data needs. So then we start refreshing and sort of upgrading our data service platform over the past year and so, and we then launched this an on-trend version of this data service platform in December last year. So it's about half a year ago, and this version of the platform we opened up to a whitelist of 200 thousands of users in the past few months and launched 3 seasons of user campaigns to allow them to earn our incentive like Sahara points and then work on very important and challenging data projects that are either published by our enterprise partners or published by other AI developers. Things across audios, videos, images, annotating data points for more useful prompts, red teaming the models, collecting data sets. All these are basically powered by the real business usage and bringing revenues to the protocols. And on just the data forms, we already accumulate millions of sort of revenues in the past year and so of the go-to-market. And we are actually going to open up this data service platform to public down this month. So then everyone can come to work on data projects they have expertise. And in about 2 months, we actually will launch a very important features to allow anyone to launch data projects in a self-serving way. Right now, the data projects still need to go through our account managers to publish. But then when you have the self-serving features, everyone can publish their data projects. And we'll basically close the loop of both the supply side and demand side, empowering a sort of open economies around data.
Yeah, I have a few questions. Can you elaborate for our listener a little bit, like what's the difference between Sahara data platform and the traditional data platform like Scale AI that
Yes.
also do the data labeling, what's the main difference? Yeah.
Yeah, I think the main difference is the concept of thinking about this as an open marketplace versus a black box process. Right? Scale AI is a black box process where they charge your data needs for a certain price, and how exactly that price got broken down in terms of how much is the margin belongs to Sahara, belongs to Scale AI, how much is the cost they pay into the labelers is very unclear. No, there's no such data available. In fact, as we have done some investigations there, we figure out they probably will have 2 to 500 sort of a margin sometimes on some of the projects they are working for the clients, right? And then they are paying basic very little, even like just minimum wage for their employees who are the laborers that sit in the office in different parts of the world. So this is a very unfair economic relationship and business model for the data providers versus for Sahara AI, we make it an open marketplace.
Mm.
And the difference is very easy to tell through the business model. So the project was published by the demand side, which are these AI developers and business. They're paying a certain, they are willing to pay, say, $1,000 for these data sets. And these $1,000 will be published along with the project, and the data service provider on the platform will see these like in the marketplace, and then they will come to subscribe to pass the exam to work on these data projects. And once they finish this data project, they get paid based on the rate the publisher posted. And we are just taking transaction-based platform fee in the middle with a transparent rate, 5 to 10%, depending on the rareness of finding the labelers or the speed that we can fill up the demand side. So it's turning into a very transparent business model. It's totally transaction based flat platform fee, and trying to really become more like sort of the intermediate infrastructure provider of this whole data management process, rather than become the sort of the owner of the data set and try to resell these data sets to different enterprise.
Yeah, I think the data curation part is will still be there, but the current trend, if everyone is following AI now, is like synthetic data. So there's like the data labeling, curation. I believe they're still there no matter what. but synthetic data is also on the rise. So what do you see the synthetic data and the synergy with Sahara AI with the data platform? How do you, like help with the synthetic data direction?
Yeah, great question. We are embracing the trend of synthetic data, right? So we are creating this hybrid workflow where it's not just purely human collecting and labeling data, but it's actually human working with AI to create and curate and label data, right? Say if the task is to find high quality responses for some questions this model is asking. In the past, we will ask human to write this response from scratch based on a question. But today, human can become just the moderator to look at the response generated by the state-of-the-art AI, and then they start modifying that responses based on their thinking, right? Or they can look at multiple responses come from multiple top-tier models and then try to consolidate the answer to the best form. So this is just one very little example of how a hybrid mechanisms work between a human AI collaboration. And we are embracing this trend. So even though synthesized data will be useful, they still need humans monitoring and sort of a moderation. And I think that's where humans still become valuable in terms of like keeping an eye on this synthesized data generation process.
Yeah, so a human in the loop is a way to go, right?
Is still the way to go for sure, especially for high stake application, right? You don't want the response from AI is totally just like without any human sort of interventions or monitoring.
Yeah, on this point, I want to touch on further notion on the, safety and bias. If we don't have the human in the loop at all, right, we would have a problem of maybe safety is lacking or there is a bias in the data. How do you think the platform could encourage the worker, to curate a very good set of data, like low bias, and then adhere to safety standard with the content moderation standard as well.
Totally. I think safety and fair are kind of like a very related, but still different concepts, right? In order to really have a fair data collections, the distribution of the contributors or the labelers are very important, right? How do you find people who are truly comprehensively representing the human population, right? Say, even if you look for an English audios collections of certain content, do you want to only collect these people from the North America, or do you want to really like include all of the English speaking countries over the globe, right? That's a very important design choice. So that design choice need to be really powered by the platforms such as Sahara AI that connect you to a huge network of this data service provider over the globe. You need to be able to find all of the people, all of the English speaking countries on our platform. So then you can really create a distribution that is really fair. So that's one part that we are trying to do in terms of ensure a fair and unbiased data collection and labeling. And then secondary is about safety, right? Like how would you protect attackers who are maliciously want to inject some bad data points into your data sets and trying to uh, basically what we call poison your data sets to poison the model behavior. And we have a very thorough array of mechanisms for quality assurance to
Mhm.
detect these bad performers and actors real time, right? For example, we have pre-task exam that can filter out people who doesn't have the right expertise or the right attitude on working on the task. We have what we call honeypot questions hidden in the process of annotation that can tag and flag out problematic actors, and we can ban them temporarily or even permanently from the platform. We also have very strong consensus mechanisms among the reviewers of those data points to make sure that multiple people looking at the data points to ensure they do agree on whether this data points is high quality or not. So then you have a basically another layer of security on whether the data points looks okay to you. And we also like what I suggested earlier, putting AI in the loop, right? So if it's a human collaborating with AI to do the data point, so the AI here can also play a role of safeguarding on the data set quality and also on the potential uh, uh, malicious behaviors of this of a model potentially will have based on the data point. So all these add up together will basically create a safer um, workflows for building the data sets.
Yeah, we have touched a lot on the data side. Can we move a little bit on the model side? Yeah. What do you think is the bottleneck now that prevent enterprise moving from centralized model to decentralized model, and how can we overcome that bottleneck?
Yeah, I think the first question actually is what is a decentralized model, right? I mean, we actually don't see a decentralized model being defined and adopted um, commonly in today's especially industry setting. I think the reason is mostly because decentralized model, meaning that you split the model parameters over a bunch of different nodes and then trying to do inference in a distributed manner. This kind of paradigm still doesn't proven to be as effective to the centralized model, where you just place a huge model on a data center. Physically, the model is just located in that couple nodes that are connected within the server rack, and that's proven to be the most powerful, efficient way.
Mm.
So I think this is still mostly about um, compute infrastructure, the efficiency, and also the sort of the cost effectiveness of the inference on the model. Yeah.
So the model would be a bit difficult to right, to
Yeah.
take apart and then distribute it all over the place. Yeah.
Yeah, but I just want to quickly add on. We do see trends of agents being kind of distributed um, over different nodes, right? For example, if an agent today is built in a retrieval augmented manner where there's a foundational model like DeepSeek is sitting on one data center and the retrieval augmented data sets which belongs to myself is sitting on my personal computers or data centers, then there'll need to be communication between my database and the DeepSeek model in the data center. And that communication potentially could also be having high latency depending on the network situation between us. But there's some research work that's trying to make this whole communication more efficient and low latent and with a low latency. So I personally believe that's also an important directions to go.
Yeah, since you already touched the agent things, and as we know, the agent market is exploding this year, right? How does Sahara envision the agent in the short term and the long term? And then how does the decentralization help this in the short and long term?
Yes. I think agent is a perfect example of a very what we call a very compositional and complex AI assets, right? Building an agent these days definitely require models, maybe even multiple models that are interacting with each other within the agent. But the agent also require a lot of valuable data to power itself, right? It need to have access to your personal working history, the memory of your workflow. You need to
Mhm.
connect to your business database, or you need to connect to the public social media channels or news agencies in order to create well-informed decisions. It also need to connect to many of the APIs. For example, we are building trading agents internally to power some of the ecosystem application. The trading agent need to connect to all of the APIs of the centralized exchange and decentralized exchanges, right? Being able to check your wallet balance, being able to swap tokens, being able to make multiple open positions based on the strategy it infers. And they need to basically both think and reasons using lots of data sources. Some are personal, some are public. They also need to take actions to execute the actions by giving them tools and giving them access to those applications where they will interact. And all this then involves all sort of ownership problems, right? If an agent is using your tool in order to draw a good decision, and they need to execute on some other people's application to get the actions going, then there's a very complex relationship between all of the three parties. Who is getting what kind of economic incentives in answering every single queries the user have? And I think going back to my problem, right? Even though the agent is built in a decentralized way, but we can, and even the agents have a lot of physical infrastructure coming together in a centralized way. The ownership, the governance, the economic attributions should be done in a decentralized way and should be done in a trustless way, driven by the smart contract protocols
Mhm.
that understand who has done what and how much they should benefit, right? So I think that's like the how we view the agent building should go down the road.
Yeah. I think we have touched quite a few points on the data points, on the compute, and on the agents. What do you think is the most promising application of AI and Web3 in the short and long term?
Yeah. I think my answer to this is very straightforward. I think trading and financial applications should still be the killer application verticals for Web3 AI. Uh, because number one, I think the majority of the retail users in the Web3 space are still very trading and finance driven, right? They look for the upside of investing into Web3 assets, tokens mostly. They look for yield opportunities to do yield farming. They need basically much more simple way to get to work on tradings and yield farmings over the Web3 space. And the user experiences today is still very complex and challenging. With AI, like I said, it might really close the gap of how you trade and how you do yield farming in the Web3 space. It also make it much easier for you to create content and applications that allow others to do a much more streamlined trading experiences. So this is both open up the opportunity for developers and open up the opportunity for the retail users to really enjoy the power of AI. And I believe that's really an important vertical.
Yeah, thank you so much. Before we're wrapping up, can you let our listener know like what's next for Sahara AI, any upcoming product or partnership, anything?
Yes, we just launched our AI developer platforms 2 weeks ago. We have a data upload and registration user journey open up, which is the phase one of the AI developer platform. And we already accumulated 1.5 millions of data sets registered on chain with about or close to 100K daily active users on our platform. So coming down, we have another two phase for the AI developer platform. The second phase will be actually allow you to use our agent builder to produce your personal agents while also protect your ownership of that agents as well as the data set used to build that agents through our agent registration process, which is an on-chain registration. And that is actually to be opened up on 24th of this month. So, and that's gonna be launched together with our AI marketplace, which allow you to browse and discover all of the data sets and model that are useful for you to build an agent. So
Mm.
this is a one big milestone for us towards like creating a decentralized governance and sort of a monetization process for building agents. So please stay tuned. We'll have a lot of exciting product launch done this month.
Sure, we'll keep monitoring your Twitter account and then see what's coming next. Yeah, I think
Yes.
we are running out of time. Thank you so much, Sean, for sharing with us today.
Thank you, Naram, for having me. Excited to be talking about all these very interesting and important problems with the audience.
Yeah, see you next time.
Thank you. See you guys.